Amenhotep III was running the show during Egypt's glory years, so it's not surprising that the largest statue in the Cairo Museum shows him with his family. There's Amenhotep III, and there's his wife, Queen T. They had 6 kids, and what's important is how the children were treated. There were 4 daughters. There's one of them. The statue's kind of a family portrait, and all 4 daughters were given important titles. There was also a son, Thutmosis. He was named High Priest of Memphis. And there was one more son, named Amenhotep, after Dad. He's not on this statue. He's not on any royal portrait. He's not in any royal record. There's a real mystery here. Why was the royal family totally ignoring their youngest son?
Okay. Well, actually, they ignored both sons. As Velikovsky tells us, the older son died in childhood. The younger son, Amenhotep, is sent away, probably to Syria, definitely to the Middle East, because he was deformed. But his mother, Queen T, needed one of her sons to succeed her husband because she was rather much younger than her husband and she outlived him. And life was not really great for a widowed queen if one of the children of the minor wives became pharaoh. So, of course, she sent for her son, Amenhotep, who came home and took the throne. Now, in ancient Egypt, incest was really considered horrible. It was only in later times that pharaohs were expected to marry their sisters. And that is a long story, but in this time, incest was a crime against the gods. It was a heresy. And so Amenhotep was eventually branded a heretic, briefly jailed and exiled, and he was blind. Now, here we go from the clips from various History Channel YouTube things to Velikovsky. The Temple of Luxor was started and built by Amenhotep III. He was, this is not Velikovsky, this is me. He was named after the god Amon, A-M-O-N, who is sort of a solar deity, but was the major god of Thebes in Egypt. Now back to Velikovsky. When the temple is dedicated, the main ceremony took place in the month of Paufi. The image of Amon was carried from Karnak to Luxor on the sacred barge by more than a score of priests amid rejoicing crowds, and the pharaoh himself participated in the procession. Now, let's skip a little bit to one of the really relevant paragraphs by Velikovsky. T conceived several times. She gave birth to a son, but of him nothing is known. He was never pictured or mentioned until he came on his father's death to claim the throne. The daughters of Amenhotep and Queen T lived with their parents and appear on family portraits. Just as the clip said. And then we go a little further. Page 56 in Velikovsky's book. The previous quote was page 50. So we're just a little ways in. Akhnaton knew nothing of Egypt when he assumed royal power there. He had spent his childhood and youth abroad, either in Syria or in wandering from country to country and from court to court in the lands of the Middle East. His name is never mentioned in the many inscriptions of Amenhotep III. Although of the prince heir to the throne, such mention would be expected. He and his father are never pictured together on bas-reliefs. Amenhotep had himself depicted together with his wife and daughters in enormously oversized figures, but no son was ever represented in this or any other family portrait. In the tomb of Yuya and Tuya, the parents of Queen T, there were mortuary gifts from the king and queen and their daughters, but none from Akhnaton. Even the more mere existence of Akhnaton is nowhere hinted at during the reign of his father, Amenhotep III. Then, after the hunter king died and his widow Queen T had functioned as the head of state for a few months or weeks, her son appeared on the scene and took over the rule. It has even been assumed that he usurped the throne. In other words, there were other contenders. Now, Oedipus in the Greek myth is known as a usurper. He has children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. And as the story goes on, the 2 sons agree to take turns on the throne. But one son refuses to give up the throne. They're each supposed to rule for 1 year and then let the other brother rule for 1 year. And yet, one of them decided he'd rather stay as king, and probably on the advice of his mother's brother. That would be Queen T's brother. Well, back to Velikovsky.